Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masechtas Yevamot daf Pei. We are going to begin on daf Ayin Tes Amud Beis, the very last line, Hechidami. So we were learning in the Mishnah that there was an opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and he says that when it comes to a Sris Adam is someone who became a Sris only after birth, that Chalitza can take place, as well as in the event that that person would die, that his brother could perform chalitza. He says the reason is because a Sris Adam has a shasa kosher. It's a time in his life that he was not a Sris. Mashen came by a Sris Chama because there was never a shasa kosher. According to Rabbi Akiva, says you cannot have chalitza done. Rabbi Eliezer says the opposite, and he said that a Sris Chama, actually, the din is that you could have chalitza done. The reason is because there's refuah, there's a potential healing only when it comes to a Sris Chama. However, when it comes to a Sris Adam, since this person developed it after birth, so this is something which has no refuah. So the Gemara asks, Hey Chidami Sris Chama. What is this case of a Sris Chama, which again refers to a person who became a Sris already at birth? So in this, the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yitzchak v'Yosef Amar Rav Yochanan calls, we continue to pay Amud Aleph, Shelo Rasha Achas B'Kashrusai. As we said, there was never a moment that he was kosher. Says Rashi, Shelakim Imai, that he had this affliction from the time of his birth. So it was something that was always in his life. So Minoi Adinan. So the question is, how do we know? So Rabbi Kol HaMeitel Mayim Ve'enu Oise Kipa. Anytime if a person would urinate when they would not make an arch with their urine, so that shows that there's something wrong with his male member. So mamai havoi. So the apa ime betahara v'shas yeshichra marka. So it says that the mother should have take bread in an oven and b'taharas, as Rashi says, chamata chayma tanur, with the heat of the oven, the chayma tzarayim, and the heat of the afternoon, v'shasi shichra marka, and they also should drink hard beer, so hard alcohol, which either shecher mozoig or chazak, Rashi says. So Omer Rav Yosef, Hainu de Shemana la'amei, this is what was said, the Omer kol shemimei imo lokui, v'yadana mai nihu. When it says that any person who is in utero that has this illness, I didn't know what it was referring to. So says Rashi, v'yadana mamai havoi. I didn't exactly understand, basically, what was the outcome as to how these things happened. Says Rashi, Kolomer lo havi yodana ahechakoi. V'hashta vali yodana the Sris Chama can mafarish v'ozol. V'leichush shema hivri b'inatayim. Why don't we have this concern that maybe he was healthy for a moment, maybe he was started off sick, but he was healed. So maybe he does have a shasa kosher. So Gemara says, Kivan did chilasa v'soifel lokui. Since the beginning and his end, he has this affliction. We're not going to assume that maybe he was healed. He probably has always had this problem, and therefore, again, doesn't have a shasa kosher. So Meisiv Rav Mori Rav Chanina bar ben Antigonus Oimer Boitkenoi. So it says this is referring to Bechoros, that we do an examination Shosh Pamim Batach Shmonim Yoim 3 times within an 80 day period of time. So on this Rashi quotes that Rav Chanina ben Antigonus said that Boitkenoi Shosh Pamim Basach Pei Yom Beroish Pei at the beginning of the 80, of Emsa Pei in the middle of a Soy Pei. It's not enough just to examine someone at the beginning, at the end, because he says Shema ben Atayim Avra ben Imsa Shenu Kavua. So it's possible that it's not like a mum kavua. So the question is, when it comes to din b'chayr, we don't assume that just because you checked at the beginning or the end, that's enough. You have to check in the middle as well, because maybe something changed in the middle. So how come over here we don't have the chash? When it says l'chad aver chashina, let's say, for example, there's a mum on the eye. So that's something which potentially could change. To say on the entire body, like which is a sris chama, it's something which affects his whole body, that we're not going to assume that there was a change. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Loki. So he says, no, it's all totally on refuah. Raminhu ben esrim shana, let's say a person is 20 years old, and still v'lohevi shtei cyrus, and he still was not able to show any signs of maturity. He wasn't able to produce 2 hairs. So yavi raya shehu ben esrim. So we bring a proof, as Rashi says, im based in matzrichin es hayavama lachaloitz liyavim. If we want this yavama for chalitz and yibum, yaviu kroi v'hayavama, we bring the relatives, and they have to provide a raya shehu ben chaf, that he's 20 years old, v'tipater below chalitza v'yibum, in order to pater this woman. So all you need to do is you need to bring proof that this guy's 20 years old, v'hu sris, and because he's a sris chama, l'chayotz v'miyabim, there's no chalitz and there's no yibum required. Says Rashi, "Behu sris kolemer v'noldulo simani sris." It was already produced at birth, the simani of a sris, which means it's a sris chama. So in that situation, such an individual doesn't do yibum or chalitza, is not shaykh to be able to have a child. For that matter, a bas esrim, also when it comes to a woman who's 20, will have ushtei cyrus, if she hasn't shown any signs of maturity. Again, you have raya shehi bas esrim. We have to prove that she's 20 years old, vihi ha'aylonis, and therefore she has the status of an aylonis, and an aylonis is all choliletzes lomas yavemas. So, David Beis Hillel says that 20 years old is the cutoff. Beis Shammai Omrim zevazeh b'nei shmoyne esrei. He says it's not 20 years old, but for men and women, the cutoff is 18. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, and this is why we're bringing this down, because this is the sheet of same Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer hazachar k'dei Beis Hillel. When it comes to a man, I hold like Beis Hillel is 20. Because we know that a woman typically matures faster than a man, which is one of the reasons why bat mitzvah is 12, bar mitzvah is 13. So when it comes to this, the din is, it's totally on, there's a chiluk between a boy or a girl, a man or a woman. But the important aspect is we're talking about over here a sris chama. Now, our Mishnah, according to Rabbi Eliezer, said that a sris chama is shaykh for refuah, and therefore there is a din of chalitza. So over here he says loy chaletzes emes, and we're talking about a sris chama. So it's a stira in the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. So on this, the Gemara gives 2 answers. Amar Rabbi Bar dikoili Amar Shmuel chazu bar Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer retracted. The question is, diboilu hu mahai chader bei. Did he retract from the Brisa or from our Mishnah? So we're going to see from the Brisa. Tashma the sign Rabbi Eliezer Omer sris chama chayotz v'chayotz and liishtoi. We see beferish that he holds similar to what our Mishnah said before, that a sris chama you could do chalitza shekein b'minon misrapin, because it's something this individual could be healed. How do we see this? When it came to Alexandria in Egypt, so therefore we see you could do chalitza of the sris chama just like our Mishnah, and therefore he was chayzer the Brisa above. Rabbi Eliezer Omer a different pshat. Really, he did not retract. So the question is, what does it mean? What's the din when it comes to sris chama? When did we mention? It says Rashi Hazaka Beis Hillel that we hold for a man you have to wait till 20 years old. Love Amadi Karmel as not. He wasn't talking about the din of chalitza, because in our Mishnah he holds you do chalitza. He's just telling that up until 20 years old, he has the status of a katan. If he didn't bring any shtei cyrus. After 20, I'm reading gadolhu. We just say he's a gadol. So he's not talking about chalitza, because a sris cham, according to him, you could do chalitza. So all he's doing is explaining what is the age where you're considered to be a gadol. But it has nothing to do with the machlokus of whether chalitza can be done. He holds chalitza can be done with a sris chama, because a sris chama is shaykh for refuah. So it's not a stira. All he's doing is explaining this 20 years old is the time in which he'll be chayv b'neinchin. Itmar. So we learn the following. Achol chaylev. Let's say a person ate these forbidden fats, which normally, again, there's a punishment. Now it depends. Once she's 12 years old, she had her bat mitzvah, and similar to Beis Shammai, ad ben shmoyne esrei, which is the shita of Beis Shammai, until 18. The noidelu simon sris, and there were simoni sris that were produced. U'achar mikan, so after that point, after 18 years old, and let's say hevi shtei saros, she ends up showing signs of maturity. So Rabbi Omer nasa sris l'mafreya. So we say that she's considered to be a sris l'mafreya. What does that mean? To be chayiv chatos from even the age of 12. Says Rashi, meben yud beis, the pachas miyud beis lo haviu vadi katani. Less than 12 is nothing to talk about. Skipping another line. Shmoyne esrei Rabbi Lezer v'loy hevi avu b'shechazer v'hevi eno klum. Even if, let's say, she produces later on, it's nothing. The one I'm reading, Kivada Hashta Aisi, we don't say, oh, now that she has these simanim, Igoli Milsa de Ad Hashta Katan Havoy. Up until now, she was a Katan, the Besaros Tali Milsa. Ella Besris Machsakinan Le, we consider still as a Sris, the Chashvin and La Bas Oinshin Mishneim Aser Be'elach. We don't say, oh, okay, now she's showing simani godless, so therefore it's only now is she chayiv. No. According to him, you're chayiv l'mafreya, because we say that she was always a sris, because she didn't show any signs of simonim up until the age of 18, even though now she does, but we still say she's a nasa sris mafreya. And therefore, if she ate chaylev between those ages of 12 and 18, you're still going to be chayiv. Shmuel Eimer katan haya ba'oisa shah. We say, no, she's still a katan during that time. And therefore, from the ages between 12 and 20, according to this shita, you're not going to be chayiv. Says Rashi, why? We don't consider like a gadol. Only once she's 18. Only once she's muchsak as a sris, that's the time. Fine. So again, this is the machlokus. What's the status between 12 and 20 years old? So Maskiv or Rav Yosef or Rav. So he asked the question according to the sheet of Rav that she's in Sris Mafreya and therefore she be chayv chatos if she ate a carbon, if she ate rather chaylev. So the din is like this: Islandness Rav Meir Halo Kanas. According to Rav Meir, well, there should be a kanas. Now, what is this referring to? Let's look at Rashi. So Rashi quotes the Gemara in Masechtas Ksubas that islandness ain't lo kanas. Well, pitoi, there's no din of kanas when it comes to an islandness. So it says in Elaniris, umakmina lo kramer di amar katana ain't lo kanas, that there's no din of penalties that have to be paid when it for a islandness. The islandness hoyel the ain't lo sa'aros katanihi, since she doesn't show signs of maturity, she has the status of a katana, but yomim shahaisa royal nairus, the time when she could have been called a naira between 12 and 12 and a half. We don't say, oh, 18 years have passed and she didn't produce it, nasas gedol mafreya, so therefore we consider like a gedol mafreya chayiv kanas as a oinsa b'mei nairus. No, we don't do that. So actually that's going to be a kasha according to Rav, because according to Rav he says that you're chayiv l'mafreya. So this woman who never shown signs of naira of gadlus because she didn't show shtei cyrus, so therefore we should be mechoyev l'mafreya for kanas. So Omle Abaya, no, mekatnusa yotzal beger. It's an interesting idea over here that normally the stages of a woman is a katana, and then you have a naira at 12 years old, and 12 and a half she's a begeris. However, when it comes to the din of an islandess, we say that she skips the stage of a naira, and she just becomes a begeris, and therefore because of that she doesn't get kanas. Why is that? So Rashi says like this: well, oil nasas gedol mafreya. Really, it does all work retroactively. I behind the kanas Rameir. Why does Rameir say there's no kanas? Mishum mekatnusa yotzel a beggar. The nairis b'simanim tuya. Bezu she'en lo simanim chashvin in koime katnusa katana. We consider her as a katana, and the main nairis boigeres. Bezu Rameir ein lo kanas. So according to Rameir, there's no kanas when it comes to a naira. So therefore, because there's this concept that a naira, there's no kanas, so therefore she was never a naira. Even if it does work on Mafreya, but she skips the whole status of a naira. It says Rashi, Rabbanan, Ailonis b'mei katnusa yesha kanas. The Rabbanan Peligio v'yomer kantana yesha kanas. Yimei katnus ad shnei maser shana v'yom echad. So according to the Rabbanan, which is discussed in the third parak in Ksuvos, the concept of kanas even applies to a katana. So therefore, she was a katana, so there would be a kanas. But according to the Shita Rameir, there's no din kanas for a katana or a naira. So the reality is that since she skipped this stage, or there's no din of kanas for a katana. So since she skipped the age of a naira, so therefore she is. There's no din kanas, but it does work on Mafreya, and therefore, if she would have eaten chaylev between 12 and 18, so she would be chayav chatos. Armale kol kihani mile malyosa nisamru mishamai. All these wonderful statements are said from Shammai. Disanya, ena sris nidain keben sar moira. When it comes to a sris, he doesn't have the status of a ben Sarah Moira, this rebellious child who is sentenced to death. Lefi she'ein ben Sarah Moira nidan ela b'chasima zakin hatachtain bein islandus. Fine. So there's no. It's only when they show certain signs of maturity, from 13 to let's say 13 and 3.5 months, in 3 months. So again, it's discussed at great length. In Perak Ben Saramara, so in Baba Kama, the din is that obviously it doesn't apply to a sris because it doesn't show signs of physical maturity. The ein ionis nidainis kin nair hamarasa, and there's also no din of nair marasa when it comes to an ionis because there's no din naira. It's not a naira. Normally, why should be katnusa yatzel a beggar again because she goes from a katana to a bagaras. So normally, if let's say you have a naira, a girl between 12 and 12 and a half, who was engaged, and she's engaged in an Eishasish, so the din is that woman gets skila. Normally for Eishasish is chenek. We have a more stringent punishment for namarasa skila, but that would not apply over here because she's not considered halachically a naira. Question 5. Ma nafkamina Ladina Mahadi Amrina Gabi Islandist Nusa Yotzel Labagris Vein Lanairas. So there's 2 answers. Shein La Kanas, a Libra Rameir, Ain Kanas El Naira. He was only a naira gets kanas, but there's no kanas. The Enu Nidainis Beskila Kanaira Im Zinsa. So that was question 5, which is probably similar to question TA3. Matai Ionis Yotzla by Geras. Similar question, not exactly the same. So Shmuel Mabas Chaf Ad Yud Ches. Rav Mafreya. Shmuel Mabas Chaf or either 20 or 18. Rav Mafreya Yud Beis Shana V'Yom Echad. From the time they're 12 years old already. So it's really not the same question. Fine. Okay, let me just make a mark of that. It says, "Meben shtem eser v'yom echad ad ben shmoin eser v'nadol simon esris liachar mekan hevish de saras etc." The machlokes Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, weiter. So there's no din of nair hamarasa. Amar Rabbi Avo, simani sris, the signs of a person being a sris of ionis, uben shmoina, and also an 8-month labor, in which that is usually a sign that child is going to die, is stillborn. Ein oisemehen maisa ad shiu ben esrim. We do not do any action until they are 20 years old. So what does that mean? Which is like the shita of Beis Hillel. It says Rashi, Kloimer Aval Bishi Gomer Simani Sa'iro, but Siparnav Kishanoilid, Afil Hachi Lo Amrinin Bar Kayamahu, Vadai Ad Shiu ben Esrim Shana. We don't assume that this child is actually going to live, because it's typical that a ben shmaina will not until they're 20 years old. Uben shmain, in fact, uben shana mi kechaye. What do you mean? Do they live? Bastanya ben shmoina hari hu ke'evan. It's like a rock. You also taltala. You can't even move this uber or this tinuk because it's not like it's not alive. It's like almost a mace. The woman could like bend down and have this baby who is basically close to death to be nursed as we continue to pay him the base. Sakana. What is the sakana? So Rashi says sakana shnehem haben v'ha'im shel yarba chelav hadadim that the anes v'tomos, that there should not be so much milk in her breast that it could cause her to be ill. But anyway, we see a child who's ben shmoina is not shaykh to live. So what is this whole thing? Wait until he's 20. Who's not going to live that way? Halkamaskina, and Gemara says kishigamru simanav. Let's say if the child is born developed with hair and with nails, so in that situation, it's shaykh they can live. The sanya ezu ben shmoina kol shaloi kol lechadashav. It's when it's not completed their months. Rabbi Omer, he says simanim meichichin alav. The signs on their body will prove whether they're going to live. For example, Sarah v'siparnav, hair and nails. Shalo gamru, they're not completed. The taima dolo gamru. Hagamru, let's say they're complete. Amrinan hai bar zayinhu. We say this child is really not an 8-month-old, because an 8-month-old we say cannot live. Maybe this is really just a 7-month-old child. Vishtahuyehu dishtahi. And they just waited in the womb a while. In other words, really, the child was to be born at 7 months, which is fine. A 7-month birth or a 9-month birth is fine. The 8th month, this in-between time, is not good. So this is really a 7-month-old, and you can see this by the simanim of its fullness of its growth of hair and nails. Elohad avad rava toisva uvda. He did the following situation: that there was a woman whose husband traveled across to another country. Vishtahi atriasiyarchi shaita, waited for 12 months. V'achshrei, and he said it was kosher. This child, therefore, he said is from the Baal, and the baby was with the mom, and was delayed until 12 months. Kaman karebi the omer mishtahe kibandi mishtahe. It's shaykh that even though in that case it was supposed to be a 9-month-old baby, but maybe it was mishtah, it stayed beyond its time. Maybe it was also miscalculations. Kibandi ikarab Rabbi Gamaliel the omer mishtahi karabim mishtahi karabim avad. Since there was the shita, so therefore they did like him. The Sanya Rabbi Gamaliel omer kol shishaha lamid yoyim ba'adam inu nefel. If it's possible, and this child could wait for 30 days, then it's not a nefel. Says Rashi, shechaya shloishim yom. If it lived for 30 days, afilu lo kolabo chachi ibor. Even if it was not completed, says Rashi, Namrina l'shiva nigmura surasai avishtoi achmini. Really, it was a 7-month-old, and it stayed in the body, in the mother for a little bit longer. Because when it comes to a behemoth, it's 8 days, not 30 days. Tanaban, is a sris chama. So what is the case of a sris chama that we said was like someone was born with this issue? Kol shehu ben esrim is 20 years old. V'loy hevi shtei cyrus. They don't bring any show any signs of maturity. V'afil hevi l'achar mikan. Even if, let's say, somehow they do show proof afterwards, hari kasris l'chol devarav. It's considered to be a sris regarding all matters. Ve'elohein simanim kol she'ein loy zaken zakon. Now let's say a person doesn't have a beard. Usaro lakui, and their hair is soft. Ubasori machlik, and their flesh is smooth. Rishemil Omer Mishem Rabbi Yehuda ben Yair kol she'ein meimav malin resichais. In the time that literally it's liquid would not produce a foam when they urinate. V'yesh armim kol hametel mayim in oisa kippah, which is we saw before, that if you urinate and you don't make an arch in the urination, that it's able to go long and far away, rather it trickles out. V'yesh armim kol shichvas zaro doiche. In the situation where the person shechva zera doiche, says Rashi, shinu kosher el tzol kamayim, where the shikva zera is very clear, comparable to water. Diesh omrim kol she'ein meimi raglav machmitzin, in a situation where the one's urine does not need to be purified. Says Rashi, masrichin kishishoihin bekli, that it spoils when it's in a kli. Anytime you wash in the rainy season, bin basar mala hevel, and smoke doesn't emanate from your flesh due to its heat, the connection of the cold, and then you're bathing in this hot water, showering in this hot water, so it should emanate heat or smoke. When a person's voice is undiscernible because of its thinness, they wouldn't be able to know just by listening to the man whether it's a man or a woman. Vezui islandness. So what is? Oh, that's my sris. All these different examples. What's an islandness? Kol shehi bas esrim. She's 20. V'lo heviya beis cyrus. Again, didn't bring 2 signs of maturity. V'afil heviyu. Let's say even she did bring lachamikan. Harihi ka'ilness ochol divareha. She's still an islandness. Ve'elhein simoneha. These are the simonim for a woman. Kol she'ein lo dadim. If she doesn't have breasts. Umiskash b'shas tashmish. It's very difficult during the time of relations. Rashi says kimin kaf lamala. It doesn't look like her bodily features do not look comparable to like a spoon, literally, to the way that of a way a woman looks. If she has a thick voice, so it's very similar to certain ways to sris, to an idleness based on their voice. You don't find, it doesn't sound like a man or a woman, or when it comes to a sris. Idmar, simani sris. When it comes to the simonim of sris, this is going to be question 6. Him simonim she'omer b'sris, hainu shiu kulam, o be'echem mehem havi sris. We get this whole long list of all these different things, how a person could be determined potentially as a sris. Do you need to have all of them to be considered halachically a sris? Maybe one of them, maybe some of them. So this is what the Gemara says. Rav Huna oimer ad shiu kulam. Rav Huna actually says you need to have all these simonim to be called a sris. Rav Yochanan no, I feel be'echem, even one. Now the Gemara qualifies. If let's say they did produce 2 hairs, and it says in the Gra bizakan on the beard, bizakan. I'm not sure what's being added over there. So the fact that you have hairs, literally it sounds bizakan means by the beard. But it's questionable if that's lashon sagi nohar. But if they do produce some signs of physical maturity with hairs, then you would think they're not a sris or an islandness. Therefore, you need to be able to have all these other simonim to counter this idea. And everyone holds that. The question is, what if there's no hairs at all? So that's where the machlokas is. Ainu be Rav Nachman ibasar mala hevel. Check out their flesh to see if it's mala hevel. Again, if it's this heat coming forth from it, right? Asivle barat. Then give my daughter. Come on, Rav Huna. This is like the shita clearly of Rav Huna. That according to Rav Huna, he says that all you need to do is it's achiu kulam. So the fact is, just show me this one thing to disprove the possibility that this person's a sris. So we see it's like the shita Rav Huna. Lo, Rav Nachman sike dikna havile. This person had pegs on his beard. In other words, it's not necessarily a raya because it's possible that this person did produce beis cyrus, and there everyone holds it's only went until you show everything. So if you can somehow prove that one of these things on the list don't apply, then that person's not a stress. Question 6 as well as TB4. Hayim simonim she'omer b'sris hainu shiu kulam o be'echad mehem havi sris. So this, as we said, so hevi beis cyrus b'zikano eno nasa sris el b'chol hasimonim. Lo hevi cyrus b'zikano pluktehi b'gemara im nasa sris b'siman echad o be'kulam. Okay, and that again was similar to question TB4, which says Simani Sris Im Beina Shiu Kulam or Philip Echad Mehem Nidan Kasris. Exactly the same question. Okay, weiter. So up to the two dots. Sris Loichaylitz will Miyabin Bechain Islandus V'chu. So Katani Sris Dum Islandus. The fact that we mentioned both of them, we must be comparing them to the same. Ma Islandus Bidi Shemayim, just like an islandus in itself, that woman is something which is Bidi Shemayim. It happens through later on in life. Avsris Bidi Shemayim. Ustamek Rabbi Kiva. The Omer Bidi Adam in Bidi Shemayim lo. That the only time it's considered to be a sris is dafka if it's Bidi Adam. As we said, if it's something which happened only afterwards. A sris Adam rather is something that happens later on, as opposed to sris Chama. So he says that when it comes to an islandess, it's always Bidi Shemayim. It's not something that happens Bidi Adam. Says Rashi, Kaloimer Sris Adam boy chalitza Sris Chama lo. It's only by a Sris Adam, but not a Sris Chama, right? So l'chayra, that's a raya like Rabbi Akiva. Okay, it's all totally about Shasa Kaisher. Hasris shechol liyavim to loy pasol time of the baalahu. So it says that if, let's say, the Yevamot took place, so it says it's not going to passel. Now the time is the baalahu. Says Rashi, the havi zaina the nivlo la'achi bala shul b'makam mitzvah v'hi haisel la'bekaris. So the fact that bia took place, that was a bia which was shul b'makam mitzvah. Ha'acher lo. If let's say it was someone else, then maybe the din is different. So as we continue Pei Aleph Amud Aleph, Leimat Havdetiv the Rav Hamnuna, Yomer Shemeres Yavim Shezinsa Psuli Yavama. The din is that when you have a Shemeres Yavam who is supposed to have Yibur Machalitza, if she was Mazana with someone on the street, that will passel her to a Yavama. Says Rashi, Ke'eshes Ish Shezinsa She'asura Labala, that by having Tashva she'll be usher to her husband. So it's the same thing when it comes to a Shemeres Yavam. The Kivan Dezainahi Asur Kahuna. Lo. Hu Hadin Afil Acher Nami. The idea the Tani Reisha Bididei says not with the man, Tani Nami Sefer Bididei. But it also would include on the street as well. The Chen Ionish Shechaltsu Achin, so Taima the Boalua. Holo Baaluha, if they didn't have Bia, lo, come on, don't look Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, Ha'omer Ionis, Zainahi. According to him, he says that Ionis is a Zaina. However, according to this, we're saying that this Ionis would not have the status of being a Zaina. Says Rashi, Meperika Baal Yevimtai, Yofla Mehizino V'lo Yifraitzu. That the only time, as we saw before, that a person is not going to be called Zaina is if the Tashmish that took place is Shaykh for children. But if just L'Shem's Nus, he's very strict and holds that that person is a Zaina, so our Mishnah will not be in accordance to that opinion. Adkan.